has struck a defiant note in the face of threats from Donald Trump and his tirade when it comes to tariffs against India and also so-called penalties because India purchases oil from Russia. Over the weekend, Indian officials let it be known that India plans to continue purchasing this oil. But the big question is, where do things go from here? Today came an astonishing new charge from one of Donald Trump's key aides, Stephen Miller. We'll be looking at that in just a moment as we look at the two possible paths in front of India. One is to find a way to placate Donald Trump, massage his ego, give him, as somebody said, the headline he wants. But what precisely is that headline? And the other option is to walk away from the trade negotiations. Or is there a third path ahead? I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we continue to look at both the geopolitical, the political, and the economic ramifications of Donald Trump's big tariff tantrum. This isn't clearly just about trade when it comes to India and Donald Trump. He's made it clear that he's imposing a penalty, an unspecified penalty, because India is purchasing oil from Russia. India has made it clear that India will not be changing that policy. In fact, Trump has suddenly brought it up as an issue. It's never been an issue in all of these months. And a few months ago, when Prime Minister Modi met with Donald Trump, it wasn't an issue at all. Over the weekend, the Prime Minister made a comment at a public event, which is seen to be a direct answer to Donald Trump. He spoke about the need for India to pivot back to goods made in India, a hark back, as it were, to Swadeshi. But where does India go from here? Right now, this has become a debate about who blinks first. And of course, India has some red lines which India will not cross. There's also the larger question, does it all boil down to credit for Operation Sindoor? Let me introduce our two very distinguished experts today as we continue to look at this very intriguing face-off between India and the United States, between Modi government and Donald Trump. I'm joined by Ambassador Dilip Sinha, veteran diplomat, and I'm also joined by military veteran General Rakesh Sharma. Welcome, both of you. Before I get first comments from both of you, I want to actually play out the astonishing new charge that was made by a key aide to Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, talking on American television. He's now accused India of basically being tied up with China. Take a look.
He said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia. People will be shocked to learn that India is basically tied with China in purchasing Russian oil. That's an astonishing fact. India portrays itself as being one of our closest friends in the world, but they don't accept our products. They impose massive tariffs on us. We also know they engage in a lot of cheating on immigration policies that is very harmful to American workers. And of course, we see again the purchasing of oil. So President Trump, look, he wants a tremendous relationship and has had always a tremendous relationship with India and the Prime Minister. But we need to get real about dealing with the financing of this war. So President Trump, all options are on the table to deal diplomatically, financially, and otherwise with the ongoing war in Ukraine.
Right. So India is now being accused of standing besides China, being tied up with China. It seems to get worse from day to day. Ambassador Sinha, the last time we were talking, you said maybe, India needs to massage his ego. But given how rude and coarse he and his administration are getting day by day, almost defining the sort of boundaries for us, a kind of blackmail, stop buying Russian oil or else. What do you say now, Ambassador Dilip Sinha?
Well, I say the same thing. Welcome to the real world of politics. Blackmail, pressures, these are all things that happen all the time, especially by big powers. We have been accepting blackmail from a lot of countries, not blackmail, but pressure from a lot of countries. I mean, look at China. China is building the world's biggest dam right on our doorstep, and we have not uttered a word. In the case of Russia, Russia has been at war for the last 3.5 years, and we have not condemned Russia, not criticized Russia. We have always been neutral in this. Now, where are our values there? Why don't we at least protect our national interest or look at international values? Why? Because our relations with Russia and China are important. We depend upon China for a huge amount of very critical imports. So if you think that it is best to remain quiet, even as China continues without even telling us, it hasn't even given us information about anything about the dam it is building right at our doorstep. Now, so if in America, we have a few people, now Donald Trump is being difficult, there's no doubt about it. But the fact is that India's relationship with America is extremely important. And we have brought our relationship to this level after the 1998 bomb test, the nuclear test, and then we started talks with America. And then one of our great successes was that India-America relations enjoyed bipartisan support. Now, what Donald Trump is doing, he's essentially a one-man show over there. And this gentleman whom you saw, Steve Miller, as you showed, these are people who have very little understanding of the world, and they are actually essentially throwing global relations to the winds. And everybody is confused about in this situation. So we just have to lie low and let this storm tide over. Our relations with the US, I mean, the US is a market for $120 billion of our goods and services. That is 10 times what we export to China and Russia combined. Now, okay, when we buy oil from Russia, yes, it is a problem. It has been a problem for the last 3.5 years. Countries have been putting pressure upon us, and we are right in resisting. But at the end of the day, we have to add up our dollars. The price difference in buying oil from Russia is about maybe $3 billion. But if you start losing the American market, you'll be suffering much more than $2 or $3 billion because it's a $120 billion market. So we have to do all these hard calculations. And yes, if it means keeping quiet, then we keep quiet about it. As I said, in the case of the dam with China, we have not spoken up. It's an outrage.
So in a way, Ambassador Sinha, what you're saying is that we are softer on China than we are on the United States of America.
Yes, I think we have a knee-jerk anti-Americanism in us, especially those of us who were born in the previous century. And we all remember 1971, and we all remember all those times that these leaders, Nixon and Kissinger, bullied us. So we speak up against America far more easily than we speak up against Russia. Now, what Russia is doing in Ukraine, people actually in India are actually justifying it, saying that they have a right to invade Ukraine. China's the human rights violations in Tibet. We have never uttered the word Tibet in any of our international statements on human rights. Why is that so? After all, we spoke up against apartheid. We have spoken up for the Hindu minorities in Pakistan and Bangladesh. But why not for Tibetans? We have given exile to the Tibetan refugees in India, but we don't speak up for their rights in Tibet and the repression of their rights. Why? Because we have had this feeling that Russia and China should not be offended, but offending America is par for course. It's okay. We can do that because we know that America is a democracy. And in a democracy, we can get past. If relations get bad with Trump, there'll be in 3 years down the line, there'll be elections, there'll be a new president. So we can still manage to balance our relations. But in the case of Russia and China, we know that things can deteriorate very fast and become really difficult for us in managing the relationship. So we have to be far more differential towards China and Russia than we need to be towards America.
So let me bring in General Sharma here. General Sharma, Ambassador Dilip Sinha has a somewhat hard-nosed take on this, keeping away from the sort of popular rage and hand-wringing over Trump's daily assaults, as it were, verbal assaults. And he's basically making the argument that there's a lot more to be provoked by, or at least as much when it comes to China. But because China is this opaque country where there is no democracy and Trump is transitory, it's easier to lash out at Trump. Don't do that. Keep your head low and keep going. You don't have to react to this. Do you think we're still at this point that where Trump can be ignored? Because I know you've advocated that in the past, that ignore him. Do you think you're at this point? Because, this is now not just words. There is going to be 25% tariff and unspecified penalty, and Pakistan and Bangladesh are among 50 countries with lower tariffs than India.
So thank you, Barkha. Thank you for inviting me. Now, what Ambassador Sinha has said has got great amount of merit. President Trump has been saying that tariff is a beautiful word. Of course, he uses the word beautiful loosely. His bill is called Big Beautiful Bill. But, he has been saying tariff is a beautiful word for a very long time. Even after his coronation, he said about 4 or 5 times tariff is a beautiful word. So he enjoys the art of the so-called tariffs. And his economic advisory team is largely people who have been advocating in writing in articles elsewhere that there is a great amount of gain to be taken in tariffs as far as United States is concerned. So be it, and we ought to have been prepared for it. That he will make an exception to India is, of course, was a pipe dream. It didn't come through, and he's come like that. But having said that, let's see, what has he, President Trump, before we come to India, what has he done to the other world here? For European Union, it has been said that it's a deal for one side, it's a bill for the other side. In fact, the European Union has been hit so badly in the deal that they have signed with. There's nobody's business. Not only that the tariffs are 15%, actually they were expecting 0-0. They have 15% tariffs to the European Union. They have also said you will invest $750 billion of industry in United States, plus buy $650 billion of oil and LNG from United States. So what happens is Europe becomes deindustrialized continent hereafter, because all the industry has to finally shift to United States. So look what the French are saying. This is the worst deal you could have ever signed in European Union. What are the Japanese saying? The worst deal that they have come across here. So the world is saying the same thing. We are into a deal which we don't like. And as you rightly said, we have issues that we just can't back down upon. The Prime Minister clearly said so. We just cannot back down on agriculture and many other issues which are important to us. Having said that, now let us say what happens when I found a very interesting speech by Prime Minister Zelensky, President Zelensky recently in NATO. He said that most of the weaponry being used by the Russians to fight against Ukrainians has got components that come from United States and Europe. This is his official speech which Zelensky gave in NATO. And he said that the components being supplied across by United States, which go across like the microprocessors, etc. The United States says that you can't help it. Yeah, it comes through very convoluted supply chains. We just can't help it. There are shell companies. We can't follow it through. And even despite all the problems and despite the ban that on trade that the United States has with Russia, the United States still buys about $1 billion worth of uranium every year from Russia. So, to say that all is hunky-dory, there is something happening on top and something happening subsurface. My issue is that this is a real politic. We have to negotiate with it, continue negotiating.
But can I ask you something? Yes, I agree. The world is grappling with the Trump age. But as I mentioned, there are 50 countries, including Pakistan and Bangladesh, who have lower tariffs than India. Trump's pivot to Pakistan in recent months, whether it is, when he met Asim Munir, we thought it was about Iran. Now we know that there are business links between Trump's family and the Pakistan's crypto council. So there are all of those developments taking place. But for 50 countries, including Pakistan and Bangladesh, to have tariffs lower than India, seems to me that Trump is weaponizing tariffs to manipulate foreign policy. Now, that may be the real world, but that's what's happening. The world is not dealing with Trump's tariffs in the same way as India is being made to. General Sharma.
So true. What you said is absolutely right. The Trump is these tariffs are being weaponized, and he wants to elicit some kind of concession for us. Finally, there will be a give and take. We may not give and take on agriculture, but there would be some give and take, and we will reduce down to what has come to most countries. I don't know how does the figure come to 19%. Many countries are now got 19% tariffs. I think we'll drop down one day. I think one good day it will drop down to 19%, if not 15% in times to come, after some more trade negotiations take place and give and take takes place. But the fact is that it is the way. There will be no zero tariff here. There will be no going back into normal in the tenure of President Trump, and we have to live with this. This is the way it is going to be, and I feel so. But for Pakistan, I just add one line here.
Yeah.
Look, the Americans enjoy the art of working with dictatorships. Now, Pakistan, please not call Pakistan a democracy. No, that's an abuse to the word democracy. So it suits him to get a man to have a lunch with him who takes decisions on part of his own government without the government's representative being present there. So he is a government by himself. Now, Pakistan is geostrategically important. It is an important country. It has got located very nicely, and it has got linkages with Afghanistan, Iran, all the countries, Central Asia, all the countries United States has dealing with. So United States relationship with Pakistan, it's like Dhoop Chau, I said, sometimes goes up, sometimes comes down. It will be there like that. We don't have to bother about United States relationship with Pakistan. It's been there for the last 7 decades. It's going to stay there. Let him have lunch here, pay for the lunch in times to come. India has to stand on its own feet while dealing with the Americans. And if we can't give on agriculture, naturally, 70% of our population depends on agriculture. How can we relent on agriculture? I give one example here. About 5-6 months ago, we went to Srinagar. And when we went to Srinagar, we had a discussion with the Apple lobby there. And they all were cribbing the Apple lobby, and it was a professional discussion. And they said, our apples are not been able to sell at a competitive price in Azadpur Mandi because something called Washington apple. Because Washington apple comes to India, and it is cheaper in India, in Delhi, than the Kashmiri apple that comes from Kashmir here. And he said, we are not able to sell it. Now, can you compete with it? Should we not protect the apple industry of Kashmir? Because that's absolutely important, because lakhs and lakhs of...
I'm on your side on this, absolutely, General Sharma. But the point is, now what? The fact is that you're not dealing with, as you yourself said, a kind of rational entity. We do not know how much of this has to do with tariffs, how much of it has to do with Russian oil, which has come like out of the blue as an issue, and how much of it actually has to do with the fight over credit for Operation Sindoor. Now, before I come to that part, I want to play out a very important statement. The Prime Minister was addressing a public rally over the weekend. He didn't say anything directly about Trump, but he spoke about the sort of global uncertainty, the times we live in, and called for a sort of hark back to vocal for local, made in India, Swadeshi, which seemed in this time to be a very pointed response to Donald Trump. Take a look.
और जो चीज भारत के लोगों द्वारा बनी है, भारत के लोगों के कौशल्य से बनी है, भारत के लोगों के पसीने से बनी है, हमारे लिए वह स्वदेशी है. हमें वोकल फॉर लोकल मंत्र को अपनाना होगा. हम संकल्प लें कि हम मेक इन इंडिया प्रोडक्ट्स को ही बढ़ावा देंगे. हमारे घर में जो कुछ भी नया सामान आएगा, मैं नए सामान की बात कर रहा हूं, हमारे घर में जो भी नया सामान आएगा वो स्वदेशी ही होगा.
So, of course, these remarks, which may have been seen as generally framed, otherwise take on a new meaning in the context of what's happening. Now, Ambassador Sinha, I want to read out a comment from one of our viewers, Saurav Vishesh. Weeks before Trump's remarks, Republican foreign policy pundits such as Ashley Tellis had deemed India to be an unreliable partner. A reliable US will gladly railroad the Quad for a G2 detente with China. I think this is an important question. Ashley Tellis's essay, of course, triggered a lot of debate. But the sense is that today Steve Miller is saying, oh, India's tied up with China. Trump will be the first person to cut a deal with China if he could. And where does that leave India? And perhaps that's the way to understand, in response to your first comments, that India has a softer, more complicated approach with China, despite knowing that in the recent military action, according to the army, China provided live inputs to Pakistan and not just weaponry. So it's a very complex sort of geopolitical set of challenges we are confronted with. Ambassador Sinha? I'm so sorry, sir, I can't hear you. Now I can. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, you're quite right. In the case of China, yes, some of our imports from China are strategically important, but I don't think a toaster or a radiator heater is strategically important. And yet we are importing these, and our local manufacturers are not able to find a market. Now, one of the things that Donald Trump has done with the international trading system is that he has destroyed it. So now a country can take action to protect its industry by dealing directly only with that country. So we can take action against China for exporting certain items to us, and that cannot be challenged in WTO, which it could have been done earlier. Now, if we make a concession to America on any item, I don't say agriculture necessarily, that's a different thing altogether, but on any item, we don't have to extend that concession on an MFN basis to other countries. So we can have a bilateral deal with America. Now, that again, we should have a deal with America only in our national interest and it suits our industry. If it doesn't suit our industry, we don't have to make concession. We just wait it out. Trade negotiations can last a decade, if not longer. We have been negotiating with the EU for 10 years now. There's no need to rush into an agreement with America, especially a bad agreement like what Indonesia has entered into, or some of the other countries like Japan, as General Sharma mentioned. Japan has promised to invest $650 billion in America in industries of Donald Trump's choice. And 90% of the profit will stay on in America. Now, we don't have to enter into such agreements, but yes, we should negotiate in good faith and see where we can make concessions and where we need not make concessions. If it comes through, well and good. If it doesn't come through, doesn't matter. We just wait it out. It is
so in a way, you're saying don't be provoked, just keep talking.
Absolutely, don't be provoked. We need not make it into a slanging match between India and America. That is what I'm opposed to.
Okay,
but here's China and Russia. Why in the case of America?
Okay, but here's the possible difference. One is that Trump likes slanging matches, and therefore it takes a certain degree of psychological stillness to not respond to that. The second is, General Sharma, there are varying takes on how much of this is actually linked to the fact that Pakistan flattered him, recommended him for a Nobel Prize, said thank you for what happened in Operation Sindoor. And Prime Minister Modi, when he spoke in Parliament, not just spoke about how Pakistan was brought to its knees by India's military power, by India's air power, he also said that when US Vice President J.D. Vance tried to reach him, Vance had to call three to four times in an hour because Mr. Modi was busy in meetings with the military, and he then called him back. And there was a little bit of laughter around that. And some people believe that this didn't go down well in DC, where the egos are already bruised, and that what Trump really wants is not about tariffs, and it's not about Russia. It's about somebody in India who's high up saying, thank you, Trump, for the phone calls that Rubio and Vance made to the Pakistanis, or the other way around. Does this all boil down to that?
Now, that's a difficult one, Barkha. Look, did the Americans try to facilitate a deal between us when we were fighting Op Sindoor between India and Pakistan? I'm not talking the word brokering. I'm saying the word facilitation. I would say so, yes. They tried to facilitate even in Kargil, if you recollect. We called Nawaz Sharif to report on 4th of July.
And Bill Clinton told Nawaz Sharif that you take your men back to your side of the line of control. Jo andar hai, unko nikalo wahan se.
Correct. And maybe there was response here. When Prakram also happened, Musharraf's hands were very ringed around here, and Musharraf came up with this 11th or 13th of January statement saying that we will not do any cross-border thing. So the Americans have been behind the scenes for a very long time. In Op Sindoor, did the Americans broker a deal? No, they did not broker a deal. Finally, the DGMO of Pakistan rang up and we accepted. In fact, he rang up in the morning, but we accepted the thing in the evening. So, we did our way. But did the Americans try to facilitate some kind of a rapprochement by the talks that Marco Rubio made and what Pete Hegseth did, or what Vice President J.D. Vance did? Well, they did try on their own to facilitate a kind of deal. Whether that was singularly effective or not effective is between the government to decide, because everything would have been analyzed by the government also, including these calls that were made. But to say that they did not attempt a facilitation, I think that will be a little going on the wrong way. So if we had said, I'm just saying, for example, I do not know the diplomacy by Ambassador Sinha, can rightly correct me, but the fact is that if we had said that yes, the Americans did try to facilitate and broker facilitate a deal and facilitate a kind of ceasefire, we were cognizant of what the Americans did, and however, we took our own decision finally, and the decision was arrived at when the DGMO rang us up, and it was not by that. So if we would have given something and held back something, I think that would have probably assuaged some kind of egos.
But I think the problem, Ambassador Sinha, is this: that because Trump announced the ceasefire, that's the word he uses. We use the phrase "halt in hostilities" before Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri did. I think the Modi government politically felt the need to be much more strident about this issue of the American role than they would have, and because of Trump's repetitive, obsessive sort of fixation on this, I think people have now stopped counting how many times he said it. He said it even in the last few hours. I'm not even playing out that statement because I'm so bored hearing it. But there are other journalists, Seema Sirohi was on this program the other day and she said, all they wanted was a phone call. They wanted a phone call. After TRF was recognized to be a proxy for the Lashkar, India could have issued a public statement saying thank you, but it's got also mired in Trump's own desperate need for validation. Ambassador Sinha, I don't know, what is the diplomatic way that is true to India's foreign policy position, which is no mediation, but acknowledges that, listen, Pakistan must have done its usual nuclear blackmail. The Americans tried to make them see reason. In the end, it was the Pakistani DGMO who called us. Ambassador Sinha.
In this case, Operation Sindoor was a grand success. We were able to badger Pakistan, bring it to its knees. Now, when you have a successful operation, a successful event, then you thank everybody. You thank the guest chief speaker, you thank the chief guest, the other speaker, you thank the audience, you thank everybody. We wouldn't have lost anything by thanking Donald Trump also for his efforts.
What would we have said? What would we have said? We thank you for what?
For your efforts to bring Pakistan to its to talk to us and bring this war to a conclusion, because we have achieved our goals and we thank you for your efforts. We don't have to define exactly what the efforts were, but we could easily have said thank you for your efforts.
But I think maybe we would have said that had Trump not done what he did in public, trying to preempt India's own announcement.
That is precisely where we have to give some leeway to Trump. I mean, the fact is that he is what he is. He's the president of the United States of America, and every country in the world is today negotiating with America, knowing full well that these negotiations violate global trade relations. It violates WTO rules. The WTO is dead. The main agreement on which international trade has been built after the Second World War, GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, that is dead. MFN is dead. And yet nobody is speaking about it. Why? Because everybody is scared of Trump. Now, if other countries, if the UK, all of EU, Japan, every other country, China included, the number of statements he's made against China is legion, far more against India, and yet China is talking to him. So the fact is that everybody is talking, but everybody knows that America is a very important market, and we should not lose this market simply because of one word like thanks to America for, as you mentioned, TRF. Well, thank them for banning it. After all, it's a good gesture on their part. We are not giving up any of our key interests. I don't say open up agriculture or give up any of our other national interests, but a word of thanks I don't think would matter. But to him, it does, because he's the kind of person to whom all these little things and little gestures matter a lot. If Pakistan recommending him for the Nobel Peace Prize, that's a big thing for him. And the Nobel Peace Prize has been given to all kinds of people. I think one should be ashamed of receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, but that's what he thinks is a very big thing.
General Sharma, here's my question for you. Are we actually already looking at a 3.5 war preparation phase? What General Bipin Rawat called a 2.5 front war, half being the internal challenges in Pakistan and China. Now you have this fraught relationship with America. You have a troubled relationship with Bangladesh. You have a troubled relationship with Turkey. You have Pakistan and Bangladesh very consciously getting lower tariffs than you. Does India need to... Ambassador Sinha might argue that India needs to pick a side, because Trump is also annoyed about BRICS. He keeps mentioning BRICS. Why is India in this BRICS grouping? But I think India... it is hardwired, or India's diplomats are hardwired to assert strategic autonomy, and I think most Indians would back them on that. But I take Ambassador Sinha's point that there is a kind of visceral anti-Americanism, because actually Russia, China, we don't even understand properly. There's a certain class of India that relates to America. We know America better. Many of us have studied there. Many of us have children who studied there. Yet we have this whole, pride, and it's all there coexisting in its contradictions. So I'm just wondering how you see this from a strategic challenge point of view, Jen Sharma.
So, you see, the point has been made rightly that over 6, 7 decades, there have been many historical events where one felt that the United States did not support us the way we wanted the support from them, as being a democracy, as being relationship countries, and being, we were largely idealistic. But, whether you take it the Seventh Fleet, or there are many instances that can be brought across where you felt that the Americans, you cannot rely on that. So that thought process that, in times to come, the Americans may not come to support may be true. But despite that, most of us English-speaking people in India have got kids who stay in the United States and have got good businesses. And, while we may accuse the United States while sitting on the studios, our kids would be there, and we will be looking forward for a green card and a eventual citizenship. So, leave that apart. My view is that, you cannot basket countries. I read a thing saying that the Americans now have put countries into red basket and yellow basket and green basket. This was said by the number 2 of their treasury. And I was looking for a map. They showed a map, but it was so fleeting that, to see where is India, which kind of basket have they put India into, but I couldn't make it out. But the fact is that they would be yearning to, at one time, to improve relations. Finally, you like it, not no like it, India is a likable country. We are also a great market here. We are 4th largest economy. Can any nation forget that China is the 2nd largest economy, and whatever you might have relationship with, you have to have relationship with China in one form or the other. They are the manufacturing hub. We are a 4th largest economy, should be 3rd largest in times to come. We are the largest market that is, and upwardly mobile market. We are an aspirational society. Everybody wants a bigger fridge, a bigger motorcycle, and a bigger car. In that case, it is important for all these nations whose own countries are facing recession, that they have to get across to India with this 6.5% growth, that finally the companies have to aspire to come here. Tim Cook doesn't say that he'll wind up Apple and go away from here, despite the kind of pressure being brought across on Tim Cook by the Trump administration. But the fact is, it is the fact of life that we are upwardly mobile. Now, if that is so, I think it's time that we give ourselves a little respite, keep talking. I think things would, one has to be optimistic, things will mend itself. There would be some kind of a control on all this in times to come, and only time has to tell. If we react to everything and rebut everything and get annoyed or respond to everything, I am sorry to say so, the media is also partially to be fault. They get so excited about such things. Trump has said 25%, and people are on map boards with swords out. And I think we need to hold our horses also.
Fair enough. Both of you are advising against hot-headedness in a way. Ambassador Sinha, do you see this as the worst phase? Just a last quick word for Indo-US relations. Some say since Pokhran. Do you see it as that?
No, I don't think so. I think 71 was a very bad phase. 98 was a very bad phase. But we must also remember that in 1962, when we were really down in the dumps, and the letter that Nehru wrote to President Kennedy on the 19th of November, and Kennedy promised help, gave help, and China declared a ceasefire 3 days later. You must remember that the country that came to our help at that time was the United States of America. We should never forget that. In 71, the roles had reversed. Okay, that was a bad time. Today, we must remember that we have bipartisan support in the US, our trade with the US, our economic relations with the US, our students going to the US, everything is booming except for one little hitch, and that we have to tide over. We don't have to sacrifice any of our national interests, but we have to also keep our heads cool and see how we can get over this phase. The world is in a very difficult situation right now. Remember, Russia and China relations have become extremely close, and China remains our security threat to India. So in this situation, we have to start opening up to other countries in the world, the European Union, UK, Japan. There are other countries also in the world apart from the US. And we have to be a little more nimble-footed in our foreign relations to be able to protect both our economic and our security interests.
And I think I'll just end by reminding everybody that the Deputy Army Chief had said about Operation Sindoor that China, it was like a borrowed knife when he spoke about, the role of China in being in the backdrop all the time during this military conflict between India and Pakistan. So it's very astonishing to me. And there I agree with Ambassador Sinha that we do tend to not respond to China with the same sort of gut level fury that we respond to Pakistan with when Pakistan is like the vassal state of China. So those are important things to remember. We leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you, General Sharma, Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Always a pleasure. Always learn so much from both of you. To our audience, thank you. See you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.